Zapco has a reputation for making high quality, well-built amplifiers and a price to go with it. Let's see whether their latest offering, the Zapco Z-3KD II, holds up to their high reputation. First, let's take a look at the power supply section, which consists of 6 transformers here that parallel at the rectification stage. Each transformer is driven by 4 MOSFETs, 2 push, 2 pull. The signals for these MOSFETs come from a typical TL494 oscillator that is then buffered by some regular transistors here and here. This is the same switching power supply that you'll see in 99.9% of car amplifiers, from the cheapest stuff to the most expensive stuff. Once the 12 volts has been switched on the transformers and then made into higher voltage AC on the transformer secondaries, we come over to the rectification stage and the rail capacitors. These are Samyang 160 volt 820 microfarads, the same type of capacitors that you'd find in pretty much any of these Korean Class D amplifiers of this style. The output section is 2 separate amplifiers that parallel after the inductors. We have the driver card here, which consists of a pair of IRS21844S drive ICs, and these are not buffered by the looks of it in this one, and just driving the MOSFETs directly. And the PWM on the back of the low side drain is then filtered by these output inductors before being finally filtered for any residual noise by this last inductor. And then we have relays isolating the output section from the speaker terminal, so that when you turn the amplifier on, you shouldn't get any turn-on pop from the Class D circuit initializing. The preamplifier circuit over here consists of mostly film caps and TL072 op amps. So this circuit hasn't been developed in any way by Zapco themselves. This is a very, very generic Korean half-bridge style circuit. It's the same as you'll find in a whole number of brands, from cheap to expensive, like from InPhase, from X-Fire Audio, all the way up to like Sundown, DC Audio, Ground Zero, etc. All variations of the exact same base circuit. There's nothing new here at all. Let's take a look at the build quality. First thing I notice is there are no screws or mounts on the center of the PCB to the heatsink, and unfortunately that's going to result in a lot of board flex. This is really, really bad. These amplifiers are going to be mounted in a vibrating environment from the road and also any subwoofers that are hooked up. And this amount of flex on the PCB due to not having center supports is going to cause huge strain on the legs of the MOSFETs that are clamped to the heatsink, just from metal fatigue of being bent backwards and forwards thousands of times every minute from the frequencies that you're playing. And unfortunately, that is going to result in snapped legs at some point on the MOSFETs or the rectifiers, and then you're going to have a bunch of damage. The transformers seem to be seated down pretty well, but there are loads of loose winds on the transformer here and here as well. And unfortunately, again, with vibration, with this being installed in a vibrating environment from the road, and also, that's so loose, from the subwoofer vibrations, whether this is mounted to a box or somewhere else in the install, these will rub against each other and eventually short out the transformers, causing a blown power supply section, all the MOSFETs dead, all the gate driver dead, etc. Very disappointing to see, especially at this price point. The same over here on the output inductors. They're seated to the board okay, but this is all loose, and this is going to rub and short out eventually. We only have a little bit of adhesive here on the board itself, but nothing preventing these winds from moving around. If you watch any of my other videos, for example, of the PowerOS amplifiers, you'll see what transformers and inductors are supposed to be like when they're designed for an automotive environment like this. Now, obviously, with the power supply being based on this ancient 20 to 25-year-old circuit, there is no health check mode or safety startup or anything. So say, for example, there was an issue in the output section, shorted MOSFETs or snapped legs or something like that, there is no overcurrent protection on the power supply side to prevent it from being completely overloaded because of a short on the output side. So if you lose a MOSFET on the output side and it shorts out and you power the amplifier back up again after the short has occurred, then you're just going to completely overload the power supply section. All these MOSFETs are going to smoke, billowing out smoke from the amplifier, killing the gate drive and causing pretty expensive repair. Also, I've just noticed here there's like bits of solder left on this gate resistor leg here, and that can fall off and then short out some components as it sort of moves around inside the board. This is a brand new amplifier. It's never been repaired before, and it actually hasn't come into the workshop with a fault. It has come in with a design flaw. Yes, this amplifier has not come into the workshop today for a repair. It has no faults. It hasn't developed any problems, but it has a design flaw from the factory that I'm going to explain to you, and then I'm going to show you how to rectify it. So despite this amplifier costing a monstrous £1,500 here in the UK, which equates to about $2 grand USD, I'm going to demonstrate the design flaw that this amplifier has shipped brand new from factory with, and I'm pretty sure that all of these from the factory will have this issue. Remember how I mentioned that this amplifier has two relays here that completely isolate the output section of the amplifier from the speaker terminals during power up and then engage once everything's up and running to prevent a turn on pop at the speaker terminals? Well, let's probe the positive speaker terminal and have a look and see what we get on the oscilloscope when the amplifier comes to life. So I'm going to turn the amplifier on now. Bit of switching noise. Hear the relays. And then, boom, a turn on pop after the relays have engaged. What's going on here then? Watch closely this subwoofer driver as we turn the amplifier on. See that? Now usually this kind of turn on pop is as a result of the Class D switching initializing after the relays have already engaged for some reason. So let's probe the low side MOSFET drain leg, which is going to show us our Class D switch wave on the scope, and power the amplifier up and see whether the Class D switching engages before or after the relays. So let's go ahead and power up. Okay, Class D switching instantly comes to life, and then the relays engage. So Class D is already active long before the relays switch. So why do we have a turn on pop? Let's take a closer look at that Class D switch wave and see if it wobbles or moves at all when the relays engage. There, did you see that just at the end there? So the duty cycle moving a little bit then is as a result of the amplifier section actually amplifying something from the preamplifier stage. That little change in duty cycle, that is a little bit of DC or the pop coming from the preamplifier circuit. Let's have a look and see what's going on in the preamp. You can see there's this connector here between the preamplifier board and the main board, and this pin here is marked as in. So that's going to be the audio signal from the preamp board into the amplifier board. So let's probe that and see whether we have a little pop on there. So let's power up, ignore the noise from the SMP. There it is, there's our pop. So that is coming from the preamplifier stage and it's being amplified after the relays have already engaged. What a poor design flaw. But why is the preamplifier sending a pop through the signal line? Well, let's inject some signal. I've got about 53 Hertz going in there to the RCAs right now. Let's go ahead and probe that input pin once more and have a look as we power the amplifier up. So amplifier is coming on just now. And you can see that although I've got 53 Hertz going on, nothing yet. And then eventually we get signal, and that's actually after the relays have engaged. So basically that tells us that the preamplifier has a muting circuit. It has a delay circuit that prevents the audio from the preamplifier stage passing through to the amplifier until some delay has passed. And unfortunately it just so happens that in the case of this circuit design, the muting circuit on the preamplifier unlocks after the relays have engaged, and when the mute circuit unactivates, it actually sends a little pulse through the signal line, hence why we get our turn on pop after the relays have engaged. Now, if Zapco had actually designed this board or had done any kind of proper testing or analysis on the PCB and its functionality after this had been manufactured, this would have been caught and would never have made its way to the customer. But that didn't happen because I don't think they give two shits, to be honest. So the way to solve this design flaw then is two methods. There are two ways we can solve this. First method is either slow down the relay activation so that the preamplifier muting circuit unlocks before the relays engage, and we can do that very easily simply by increasing the capacitance that's being used for the delay timer on the relay circuit. The capacitor that's responsible for setting the delay time for the relays is this bottom one here, so we could probably just increase the capacitance value there. However, I have actually tried that, and what I noticed is that the delay time for the relays is actually dependent on the input voltage as well. So I actually calibrated a good delay with 12 volts worth of input where the relays activated after the preamplifier had come alive. However, when I then turned the voltage up to 14 volts, the delay was shortened and I got a turn on pop again. And in order to calibrate a delay that was long enough at 14 volts to not have the turn on pop come through the terminals, it made the turn on delay so long at 12 volts. You were sitting there for ages waiting for the amplifier to actually actually engage the relays, and I wasn't too happy with that. So the second solution is to lower the delay for the preamplifier muting circuit, or just get rid of it altogether. It's probably not necessary in the slightest. So I've been doing some digging around, and it appears that the circuit over here is responsible for the delay of the signal going from the preamplifier to the main amplifier board. So we're going to have a poke around in here and see what we can change to make that delay shorter, so that the preamplifier starts sending signal way before the relays ever engage. There we go, I found it pretty much straight away. This capacitor right here is responsible for setting the muting delay, and this is a 1025 volt. I think it's that 10 nanofarad or 10 microfarad, I can never remember. I'll drop it in the tester. But in order to fix the design flaw, we can either fit a smaller, lower capacitance capacitor there in place, or potentially just leave it out. See, now with that capacitor removed, if I probe the input to the amplifier stage from the preamp, the second we turn the amplifier on and the auxiliary rails build, the sine wave appears instantly. So that will absolutely prevent any turn on pop after the relays have activated. But I think that we should probably just give it a little bit of muting delay, just to prevent there being any spikes to the output section as the preamplifier comes to life, or if there's suddenly a big high signal coming into the RCA, something like that, just to kind of soften the blow of the signal into the amplifier stage. So I'm going to fit a smaller capacitor in place there. Yeah, so that's about 10 microfarads. So if we drop something in, say around 300 to 500 nanofarads, that should sort the issue. There we go. So that is a 330 nanofarad capacitor fitted. So if I probe the inputs to the main amplifier from the preamp board now, we're going to power it up and hope that the sine wave appears way before the relays engage. Let's try it. Powering up now. Oh yeah, almost instantly. It's about half a second after the rails build that the sine wave appears, and a good couple of seconds before the relays engage. So that is much better. Let's try it again at 14 volts, because like I say, the relays engage quicker at 14 volts just due to how that delay circuit works. So if I probe that again now, hopefully that still brings a sine wave into the amplifier stage way before the relays. Yeah. Again, about 2 seconds before the relays engage. That is how this amplifier should have come from the bloody factory. We're not going to get any turn on pop anymore. And just to confirm that, let's probe the speaker terminal now and have a look on the scope. So let's remove the RCA. So we've got no signal going in, and we're just listening for a turn on pop with the oscilloscope as we power up. Ready? Absolutely nothing. Did you see that? Dead flat. Quite a lot of noise just because of the Class D switching and the SMP, but powered off. Let's go back on again. Class D switching activated. Absolutely no bump on the speaker terminals anymore. So not only are Zapco charging you almost 2,000 USD for an ancient old half-bridge circuit, they're also not going through the board properly to ensure that there are no design flaws like with this turn-on pop. And on top of that, you get a horrendous build quality that is going to get damaged from vibration damage after some time of being used in a vibrating environment, like a kind of vehicle that needs a 3K amplifier. This is not the only instance of a Zapco amplifier that I've seen in recent times that has fallen subpar in terms of quality circuit design compared to its price. They are charging absolutely monstrous money for the same exact circuits and quality that you can get from a number of other brands at less than a quarter of the price. Unfortunately, it seems that Zapco has become the new Hyophonics, where they are riding on their reputation of the brand name, but maybe it's under different management now, or maybe even a different company entirely, and they're no longer producing these high quality amplifiers that everyone's expecting. They're just rinsing the name and marking the prices up as high as they can, hoping that the people that remember the name Zapco from their really decent designed equipment from back in the day are still willing to pay that money, and they don't understand about the circuits in here, and so therefore money is being made. Now, whether you use this video to correct your own design flaw in your Zapco 3K, or whether you're just interested to see what they're all about or what the problem with this was, then I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. Take it easy, and I'll see you next time.